Hi, I'm Emily Johnson, founder of Polaris Capital Advisors, and this is Money Matters, the show where we aim to inspire your financial confidence. This week, I want to address two topics, one market-based and one planning-based. Without further ado, I want to start off with one of the things that we always talk about, which is you need to follow a financial plan. And many times, especially when there are upheavals in the market, I'm sure that you're thinking to yourself, why would I follow this plan if we have so many unknowns, if we have such volatility in the market? Shouldn't I take my money and run for the hills? So I want to show you one concrete, very current example of a reason that you should stick with your long-term plan, in caveat, assuming that your plan is actually aligned with your risk. So the reason that you should stay with your long-term plan for today is the month of August. It is that simple. And why is that? It's because beginning in August, early in August, we had a lot of volatility in the market. Why? Because of headlines. So what were some of these headlines that we saw? Sentiment unsettled by latest trade war threats. Of course, unsettled. Nobody likes that. Oil prices plunge. Oh no, how does that happen? Plunge, that's bad. Turkey tantrum. Investors fret over contagion from lira plunge, which I'm sure most people looked at and said, what the heck does that mean? But it doesn't sound good if we have tantrum and fret and contagion all over again. And then we've got investors watching U.S. yield curve and no Brexit deal risk. Oh no, these are all major headlines that came out on the 1st, the 8th, the 15th, and the 26th of August. If you just looked at those headlines, you'd be thinking to yourself, I need to run for the hills. What the heck? This market is going all over the place. Everybody says sell in May and stay away. What's going on? And yet, these headlines were nothing but head fakes, because despite all this early volatility, the S&P has been hitting new daily highs. So if all you're looking at is the headlines and you're not actually looking at the balances in your accounts, which I would sort of urge you to not look every single day anyway, because you might see intraday fluctuations and day-to-day fluctuations. But to show you a chart of what I mean, this is a one-month chart of the S&P 500 for the month of August 2018. And what we see is a little bit of volatility here, a little bit of volatility here, and some of this had to do with the tariffs, with the trade wars, with Turkey, and the headlines that I just mentioned a second ago. And yet, as you can see, we have a little bit of blip, but by the end of the month, here we are hitting all-time highs yet again. So while intraday and day-to-day, we might see these headlines and we might experience some volatility, if you actually listened to the headlines only and sold in the beginning of August when we had this little dip, or perhaps this little dip, then you would have missed this entire run-up here from it's about 2812 to 2900. So this is a perfect example of why you should, I think as my dad says, mind your knitting, stick to it, because this is sticking to a long-term plan gets you through months like this, and this is a perfect example of a difficult, volatile month that would allow you to still gain ground by the end of the month. I found that one to be really interesting. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean throw caution to the wind. It doesn't mean don't read the news. It doesn't mean don't have caution. What it does mean is monitor the risks. So number one, be aware of yourself, be aware of your goals, and be aware of market risks that are out there. Adjust accordingly. If that to you means a wholesale adjustment, it means that you don't have the right plan in place. So adjust accordingly might mean moving a little bit from financials to tech or something like that, but it would not mean a wholesale allocation change, meaning go to cash or take away all of your bonds or something along those lines. Stay true to your long-term plan. So again, if monitoring the risks to you means make wholesale changes because of the headlines, then you don't have the right plan in place. So there's our number one topic for today, which is market-based, stick to your long-term plan. Next topic has to do with financial planning in general. So I have had many experiences sitting down with folks, both young and older, who are getting started in life or getting restarted. And getting started, of course, getting out of college, perhaps even in high school, just wanting to create some sort of a plan, have a new baby, wanting to create some sort of a plan. And sometimes, because life is a massive unknown, we have to get restarted. Maybe there's a divorce, maybe there's a death, maybe we've had 2008 through 2010 and it was the unforeseen, and our financial situation looks completely different than it did 2 years ago. So that restart is equally as important, if not more important, because you have less time to move forward towards those goals, but still, you have to get started. So I want to talk about what those steps are for getting started or restarted from the beginning. So again, life is one big unknown, and getting started for the first time, second time, or third time, regardless, all the steps are the same. Some of you may have seen this before. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you've ever taken a business class or maybe even a sociology class or something, this is something that you see all the time. And I won't go through the whole thing, but the first two stages of this basically means what aspects of your life do you need to fill first to then be able to get up to ultimate self-actualization or self-fulfillment. And what you have at the bottom here are your basic needs, those basic needs of food, water, warmth, rest, security, and safety. So what does that mean from a financial standpoint? It means being able to afford food, water, warmth, rest, being able to afford shelter, those fixed costs that you need in order to cover your basic expenses. And then on top of that, security. What is that? That's easy. That's a safety net. Looking forward from there, it's going to be what we see as feelings of accomplishment. So that might be additional savings, but when you're just getting started, what you're looking at here are just the absolute basics. Don't get overwhelmed with everything that's above that. Don't get overwhelmed with what stock do I pick? Do I need a Roth or a traditional IRA? Don't knock yourself out with those types of details. Just start with the basics. Regardless of whether you're just getting started or if you're getting restarted, focus here first. Make it easy on yourself. Don't overwhelm yourself. So what are these get-going steps? Number one is going to be assess your current picture. Sometimes it's not pretty, but assess it. Just get it out there. It's kind of like stepping on the scale. Once you know, and you can actually move forward. It's a huge step to actually assess your financial picture, assets, liabilities, cash flows. If you need a form for this, shoot me a line. I can get it for you. Define your goals, short-term and long-term. Think big, but think about how you want to get there. And don't be overwhelmed by what those goals are. Write them out. And then just get moving. So avoid being overwhelmed by avoid being overwhelmed. How do you do that? By obtaining advice and making checklists. I'm a huge checklist person. If you are too, this is definitely a great way to get started because it allows you to see your successes point by point. And what do those getting started steps actually look like? So this all sounds well and good. You can create these massive goals, but what are the actual getting started steps that you need, and what would be on that checklist if you had it in front of you? Number one, and again, we're getting back to that pyramid that we looked at before, where you have your basic needs. Number one is going to be savings, your rainy day fund, and your 401k employer match. If your employer offers a match, say 3%, 4%, 5%, that's free money. So regardless of what age you are, find a way to fit it into your budget because that is going to be free money that's available to you on a per paycheck basis. So rainy day fund and 401k employer match, allocating $10 to that, whatever that might be, in order to start building that savings blanket, that security blanket, is going to make you feel like you're achieving your goals and start moving forward. So that would be number 1A. I would combine with that 1B, and that would be making sure that you're paying off your debt, especially if it's high interest credit card debt. So rule number one is going to be don't add to it. So once you've assessed your financial picture and you see I have $10,000 or $5,000 or $50,000 in outstanding debts, and I mean debts that are not tied to a mortgage or a car payment, as long as it's not a massive car payment, but sort of those unsecured debts that are extremely high interest, specifically credit card debt, perhaps school debt. There's not a whole lot you can do about that except consolidate, but credit card debt. So number one, assess what your debt is and make sure that you're not going to add to it, which is where you get into your budgeting. What can you do about it? One, call the credit card company and ask to reduce your rates. They may or may not do it. Step number two would be to consolidate those. There are some really bad actors out there in the debt consolidation business, and there are some really good ones. So don't fall for anything. Make sure that you look at what the options are for debt consolidation. But if you do opt for that option, which is not a bad one, especially if you're paying 19, 20%, 16, 22% credit card rates, then you definitely want to look at consolidation so that you can knock that down and create a plan for yourself to pay it off. And what if the cash isn't there for all of these items? You really need to assess your lifestyle. Make some temporary changes that will help you achieve those short and long-term goals. It might mean that you need to take in a roommate. It might mean that you need to move back in with mom and dad. It might mean that there's no dinners out for the next however many months it is, or you at least plan for what those events are going to be. But make sure that you have a plan for that, knowing that it's temporary, so that you can use the cash on hand for these specific goals, so that you're moving forward and moving up in that hierarchy of needs, taking care of the basics so that you can move more towards self-actualization. So that's been the show for this week. Please come back next week. It's fantastic talking with you. We love your ideas. Please keep them coming. So until next week, I'm Emily Johnson, and this is Money Matters. Have a great week.